It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rise up, Red Sea. It's a Wednesday edition. Locked On Cardinals. Bo Brack, Alex Clancy. Follow the show at Locked On AZ Cards. Follow Alex at Clancy's Corner, and follow me at BOBRACK. Our Peter Schrager episode is up. It's crushing it on YouTube. We appreciate everybody tuning in, everybody's kind words about Schrags, because he is just as good a dude as you are saying he is in the YouTube chat comments and, of course, our Twitter comments. We appreciate everybody tuning in. New listeners, new viewers. We have fun. We like to mix it up. We love to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. It's this is a very unbiased conversation. Alex and I, we don't agree on a lot of things, and there's some great debate that goes on. We have Throwdown Thursday that's coming tomorrow, where we pick a topic, and then we just throw down on it. Today, a little bit easier. We will have a debate, though, because there was some news that's going to have us kind of talk about who's the biggest Arizona Cardinals draft bust since moving to the desert. We'll get into that a little bit. We've got a second depth chart for the Arizona Cardinals as they approach the Kansas City Chiefs, who's not playing on Friday, who's already been ruled out, and what we expect to see. We're starting to turn the page from preseason week 1 to preseason week 2. One thing's for sure, though. Alex and I, Saturday, each have our big fantasy football drafts, the drafts that we care the most about. And if you have fantasy football questions that you need answered before your draft, don't miss tonight's Locked On Fantasy Live. That's going on 9 Eastern, so 6 out here in the West. It's streaming on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. It's our stable of fantasy experts with sitting there ready to answer your questions live. Submit them ahead of time at Locked On Network on Twitter. I believe Vinny Iyer is going to be the guy. Sporting News, of course, Locked On Fantasy Football. I will say this. I don't know if you saw this, Alex, but already Benjamin Solak has exited the Draft Network. And then I saw our guy Trevor Sikkema is on to bigger and better things, leaving the Locked On Network, leaving the Draft Network. Big thanks to Trevor Sikkema. Incredible draft coverage each and every year. Big tip of the cap. We're going to miss him here on the network.
Yeah, the king of the 3-side barbecue experience. If you have followed Trevor Sikkema, that's his claim to fame. He says he knows a lot about football, but he says if you don't get 3 sides when you go get barbecue, get the hell out of my kitchen. So
wow.
That's oh yeah. Very, very I mean, there's some animosity towards it when there's not 3 sides. You can ask him about it. Him and I have had myriad text conversations about it. Yeah. I mean, they were Solak, they're definitely going to land on their feet on the top of other people's shoulders because they are some of the best in the business when it comes to draft coverage, for sure.
As far as barbecue is concerned, do you have a go-to spot in the Valley?
No, I mean, I'll do like in a pinch, I'll do Dickie's. I know it's kind of the chain version of it. Little Miss Barbecue is good, but like, yeah, I mean, I miss Dr. Hoggly Woggly's Tyler, Texas Barbecue. Dr. Hoggly Woggly's.
Dickie's. And then, maybe Little Miss Barbecue. Little Miss Barbecue blows Dickie's, that chain, out of the water. I mean, if you're going to go change, I like Rudy's. You ever been to Rudy's?
I've not.
And then also Honey Bear's Barbecue, right down from the street from our old stomping grounds. I would go down to Honey Bear's over there on Van Buren. It's a fantastic local barbecue joint.
Yeah, they've got a good El Pollo Loco right there that I frequent and just look at the barbecue across the corner. I mean, for those that don't know, in North Hollywood, California, where I grew up, Dr. Hoggly Woggly's Tyler, Texas Barbecue is the best barbecue I've ever. I mean, like, because I went to Nashville. I mean, we're so far removed from good barbecue. Like, there are spots, but that's not an Arizona thing, you know?
Like, yeah, but like Arizona and all the people love it. Everybody's transplants, and we're bringing all the best from across the United States. Like, we've got all the barbecues represented, and we'll end this conversation pretty soon. Like, we've got KC, we've got Texas barbecue, we've got, Carolina barbecue, all here. We've got Chicago hot dogs. It's everywhere. So
the best transplant, though, Bo, is Arizona or Philadelphia Cheesesteak Company. There's a company that moved out here from Philadelphia that completely just uprooted and moved out here. Some of the best Philly cheesesteaks I've ever had, for sure. In Scottsdale, $14 a pop.
Our food, our talk about cuisine it's ended. It's officially over. Saying Dickies and Little Miss Barbecue in the same breath is like saying Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen in the same breath. Trying to compare those two. Josh Rosen was just released by the San Francisco 49ers, Alex. It was actually yesterday. It was on Tuesday. They said, thanks for your time. He spent time on the end of at the end of last season on their roster. He got a chance in their preseason opener, and they'd seen enough. So if you're keeping count, Josh Rosen was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, 10th overall. They traded up from 15 to 10th. He spent a season in the desert. He was traded for a second-round pick, which was turned into Andy Isabella. He spent a season in Miami. He played in 6 games, got 3 starts. Fitzmagic ended up, finishing that season in Miami. His tenure was done after just 1 year there. Ends up leaving the Dolphins. He's on the practice squad for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know if he got a ring or what. If he did he get a ring last year?
I don't know.
For his time spent in that organization, and then he made his way to the Bay Area, and now it's come to a close. Is Josh Rosen the biggest bust in Arizona Cardinals history?
I mean, there have been so many, Bo. The trade up definitely adds a little bit extra oomph to that possibility. And coming out of college, there was does he even like playing football? And Josh Rosen, if people liked him more than they didn't, this would be a much more difficult conversation to have. He was a smug, arrogant kid coming out of college. He was a tennis guy. He wasn't really a teammate guy. He had that one great game against Texas A&M, like Uncle Ricoing the whole Josh Rosen situation, where he threw 4 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter of the game, or 3, and they ended up beating Texas A&M week 1 of a college football season. Like, I don't know, but I don't think the ceiling was as high coming out of college as it was for Matt Leinart. Matt Leinart was all everything until he went, ballroom dancing his senior year is the only class he took. Like, he was he was the belle of the ball in college football. He was the Troy Aikman of college football. He was never touched, had the best offensive line, had Mike Williams and Reggie Bush and Lendell White. They had a bevy of offensive guys, and he came in and played better than Josh Rosen did for a couple stops. But I don't know. It would have to be between those two.
Well, there's obviously guys like Robert Kimdichie who couldn't even stay on the field. There was Jonathan Cooper who, I will go to bat for Jonathan Cooper that the injury, his leg snapping in the preseason just derailed his entire career. The guy just wasn't the same. And you saw kind of a bulldozing guard before that, and he just didn't have that same bulldog mentality afterwards. So I think Jonathan Cooper can kind of become exempt just because of the injury. But there is no injury as far as Leinart. There is no injury because of a guy like Rosen. I got to say that I think Josh Rosen is the biggest bust, no doubt about it. I think it's hands down. They were both 10th overall. It's a good debate because where they were drafted. But you're right. Matt Leinart, as far as the fanfare coming out of college, winning those. I think that those titles are back in LA, right? They after the NIL laws were just rules were just pushed through. They took away all those sanctions or whatever. But I got it. Josh Rosen, when you and I were covering that team, we would make the dumbest concessions and find just ways to say, okay, Josh Rosen we think he can be a good quarterback. And we'd see 1 or 2 good throws a game. But other than that, he was bad. He was just as bad as the rest of the roster.
Yeah, the best throw that he had was in his first or second preseason action. We've talked about this all the time. He threw a laser on 3rd and long, I think, to Christian Kirk between 2 defenders for a touchdown. And that was the peak. No, that's not true. He threw a 75-yard bomb down the sideline against San Francisco to Christian Kirk. We're like, oh, man, we got something cooking here in the desert. And then you see they beat Green Bay, but it was Chase Edmonds on the ground. It just wasn't. Yeah. It was bad. It was. Bo and I deserve the success more than the fans do of this team, having to go, and we talk about this a lot, 5 minutes on the field, week 1, and this wasn't necessarily Josh Rosen, the Arizona Cardinals home opener, week 1 against Washington football team. 5 minutes of offense in the first half of that game when Bo and I were sitting in the press box. Yeah, we deserve this. Selfishly, we deserve this.
How much criticism does the Arizona Cardinals organization deserve for Josh Rosen being a complete bust?
Steve Keim should have been fired after that year. Like, there's no question about it. The GMs get fired for less than what happened. So that question is kind of null and void because they just threw it under the rug. Like, oh, we have the number 1 overall pick. So
yeah,
they just move on.
That season out from the franchise encyclopedia. They just they ripped the pages completely out. They did. Yeah. They like, oh no, we went from 2017 and then 2019 was a great, we were coming back. Wait, what about 2018? Yeah, 2019. Yeah, we were on the we got Kyler Murray in there and Cliff Kingsbury but I mean they won't even acknowledge its existence because you're right. Anybody with any kind of grasp of football would realize that it was one of the worst, constructed rosters ever. Steve Wilkes was overmatched as a head coach. The quarterback is one of the biggest busts. But, as far as my question about the Cardinals and where they should be as far as Josh Rosen's downfall, like, was it them setting him up for failure? I mean, I remember being there at the Bears game, and they were trying to put him in the game, and they couldn't even do it. And he gets in with 4 minutes left, and the team then chasing points after Sam Bradford, unceremoniously. That was the last time that fraud stole any money and any playing time at the NFL level. Like, it was, he gets in there and he has really, from the very get-go, he was doomed. What? But I think the other organizations, San Francisco, Miami, and now Tampa, have proven that it wasn't the Arizona Cardinals. This guy is just, he can't play at this level.
I mean, Bo, that was so bad. God, that gave me PTSD. Like, they put a rookie quarterback in his first game action, pretty much running a 2-minute drill. What the hell are you doing? And before that, what was it? On second down, David Johnson missed a block. So they pulled him on the pivotal third down play. The only guy that could produce any sort of offense for that team, and they yank him. There have been, Jacksonville being 1-15 last year was a better team than the Cardinals in 2018. Like, the fact that they won 3 games absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, somehow Kyle Shanahan is exempt from getting criticism from losing twice to the one worst constructed rosters in that decade. Yeah, but he's got a flat brim hat. He likes to listen to Lil Wayne, and his dad won a Super Bowl with Elway and nothing else after that. It's Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Bo, Brack, Alex Clancy. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On AZ Cards, at BOBRACK, and at Clancy's Corner. Let's get into this. The Arizona Cardinals, they are 2.5-point dogs at home. If you want that action, if you want to take the home dogs, BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season also in full swing as teams make their push for the postseason. About a month and a half left in the regular season for the MLB. Get your latest news, odds, and info, all your sporting needs at BetOnline. Also, they've got great sign-up bonuses and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Head to the website on your mobile device, on your computer. Receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You put in $25, you get about 12 and some change to play around with. You got $50, you get $25 to build your stack for free. It's not your money, it's their money, and you actually get to bet it and make money. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Another episode of Hard Knocks last night, and Mike McCarthy might be the most boring head coach in the history of the series. Might be. Have you watched it yet? Not even episode 1? Are you even a football fan? Do you like football?
Yeah, I do. Okay. But I don't need to watch this dysfunctional circus get shoved down my throat. Like, I don't care enough.
Mike McCarthy thought it was like some brilliant idea. Mike McCarthy thought it was like genius. He brought to the Cowboys organization as kind of like I don't know, just he wanted to get mojo from Austin Powers. The got my mojo back.
Mojo.
The movie from 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
Somebody just was like, "Hey, you should watch this film. It's pretty funny from a couple decades ago." And it was the first time he thought anybody had seen it. It was like he thought it was brilliant. So he wanted the Dallas Cowboys to have this got my mojo back moment, a mojo moment. And you're just like, this is what they're dealing with. Mike McCarthy is just that guy. Talk about overmatch. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals, Josh Rosen, who we just talked about, Chase Edmonds, knocked him from his coaching job at the Green Bay Packers. And they were thankful for that because the Dallas Cowboys were dumb enough to pick him up just about a season later. And we'll see what happens with them this season. That was their first preseason game. The Arizona Cardinals play host to the Kansas City Chiefs in week 2. Chandler Jones, not going to play. J.J. Watt, not going to play, but he said on the 12 News broadcast in preseason week 1 that he's going to be good to go week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. I don't have any kind of fear that that's going to be an issue. I did see this Kansas City Chiefs blog saying that the Chiefs offensive line is going to have it easy against Arizona. The arrogance of the Kansas City Chiefs fan base and their bloggers to think that, okay, so, I mean, Marcus Golden still going to make some noise. I don't know what Devon Kennard's status is. I was watching video. Victor Dumakaji, that guy is as advertised as far as his motor. He was pretty nonstop. I think that the Arizona Cardinals stable of pass rushers shouldn't be overlooked, and that the Kansas City offensive line actually should get a pretty decent challenge from the Cardinals' backup defensive lineman.
I mean, Kansas City brought in some guys. I don't know who this isn't Locked On Chiefs, so Bo and I aren't sitting in gold thrones here, being Chiefs, Chiefs podcasters. But I mean, they brought in Joe Thuney. They traded for Orlando Brown. I mean, they're like, you know what? Can we just take one quick second? How incredible was it, the offensive line that they put out in the Super Bowl? Like the fact that actually happened, that injuries decimated that, and Laurent, whatever his name is, the guy that's a doctor in Canada, went and did that.
Yeah.
Like Tardif or something. He was running for his. That's unbelievable that just gets completely glossed over. And they're like, you know what? We're going to spend $1 billion on our offensive line this year. That's obviously the only shortcoming of this team after cutting Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. Having Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney on the left side, it's just like, I mean, how is anybody going to get through to Patrick Mahomes' blind side this year? So I get it. I kind of get it from the blog if those guys actually play. It's just a reminder that they spent so much money and draft capital on the offensive line this offseason.
I thought that they drafted your boy out of Oklahoma, the center, Creed Humphrey.
Yeah, Creed Humphrey. Yep.
I thought that they did an absolute incredible job this offseason. Is it Brett Veach, I think, is their GM as far as reworking things on that offensive line after witnessing Patrick Mahomes running for his life, miraculously getting throws off.
They didn't score a touchdown.
I know. It's unreal. And then with that patchwork offensive line, and then to rework it, get a guy like the caliber of Orlando Brown. They brought in Kyle Long. I know that he's probably going to miss the season, but just they revamped that thing, and good on them. But as far as the fans and everybody kind of overlooking, who I thought was a great unit. Sure, you take away Hassan Reddick and his 12.5 sacks, but I think the Arizona Cardinals pass rush, is not something to kind of overlook if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, and I doubt they will. Looking at a couple other things, Patrick Mahomes played preseason week 1. We'll see how much he plays this upcoming week. And then, of course, Kyler Murray, who is on record now. I'm not a big fan of preseason football, but we'll see if we see K1 out there. The Arizona Cardinals, it's not sneaky. It's a fun preseason matchup to play one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, these are the teams you want to play in the preseason for sure. Just as kind of a litmus test for not just the ones, but the twos to see like how deep your team is, the wide receivers from them. I mean, they have them for days. They have wide receivers for days. Like the twos on that team could probably be wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3s on different rosters, depending on the level of talent and wide receiver rooms. Like you'd want to play the Chiefs and the Packers and, the Chargers with their offensive. Like you want to play good teams in the preseason to kind of see where you're at. And you're right. I mean, I say it tongue in cheek, but like, we'll see what the pass rush is like against the offensive line. I'm sure they're not going to get a lot of run against the ones, but it'll be a good like little preseason litmus test to see where they're at for sure.
What's the biggest thing you're going to look forward to? And I know we'll have time as far as tomorrow and Friday to break it down. But what as far as what did you not see from preseason week 1 for the Arizona Cardinals that you want to see in week 2?
Kyler Murray.
Well,
was that a trick question?
I said
that a trick question. I want to see more Praterade get dumped on people for game winners.
Saw enough of that. He could not kick the rest of the preseason, and I'm good with that. I
want to see the weak spots. I want to see more Marco Wilson. I want to see if he can do it again. I want to see the linebacking core. Like, it's just, I want to see, cool, you did it once, do it again. All the guys like Rondell Moore, see if they can use him I mean, it's going to be about the rookies. We're kind of punting on the running back room now, right? See if Benjamin can play. You're going to get what we're going to get. Either it's going to be Benjamin is 3, it's going to be Ward is 3, and we know who the 1 and 2s are going to be already.
Well, I'm looking, we'll see what James Conner's availability is. I would like to see, because I was looking for it last week, maybe Chase Edmonds get a carry within the red zone. But I think the offensive line needs to kind of prove that they offered some questions last week, especially behind the starters.
Josh Miles, namely, right?
What was it? Yeah, Josh Miles for sure. Colt McCoy was sacked, 3 times? And then you had 1 sack of Chris Trevler, so 4 sacks. I mean, that's a pretty high number. But you're right. The guys, the rookie guys, Tate Gowan, outside of the one poor tackle, he looked like Patrick Peterson trying to tackle at one point. It was terrible. But in 34 snaps, this is according to a reporter named Cam Meller, and this was on Twitter. He faced 6 targets. 1 was a throwaway. He allowed 1 catch for 9 yards. Passer rating of 39.6. So Tate Gowan, despite Marco Wilson's just, stellar debut, Tate Gowan was equally as impressive in coverage. Now, of course, he was playing against, 3rd and 4th stringers when Marco was out there on the first drive. But that's really encouraging. And yes, to see them put it together for another game, potentially against Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City Chiefs offense, that's something to look forward to, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like if you could pick just one little faction, because I kind of gave you everything. If you could pick one little faction of this team to see them pop, it would be Marco Wilson and Tate Gowan. Absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about that all offseason. Like, if you can get one of those guys to pop and one guy to kind of just be a rotational guy, if Tate Gowan or Marco Wilson, who knows? Because you're right. I mean, the numbers were a little bit better than we thought initially, as you just mentioned. Like, if you can bolster that cornerback room with a 4th and 6th round pick, I mean, that's a dream scenario. It's an absolute dream scenario.
Yeah. Yep. There are a couple of things going on as far as the coaching staffs are concerned. And, as far as Cliff Kingsbury, there's Andy Reid, and then there's the always sought-after offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, and Eric Bieniemy, whose name has been mentioned on this podcast. We'll bring that up here as we wrap things up here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Got to tell you about the best tasting protein bar of all time. Alex, they were holding blind taste test with candy bars and the Built Bar. And Built Bar was just outright winning on taste. They were crushing candy bars as far as flavor. And what's crazy about Built Bar is they don't cut any corners nutrition-wise. So you're getting the great taste, and you're also getting the delicious flavor and nutrition of the Built Bar. We were one of our guys was asking if they ship to the Netherlands. Unfortunately, they're just right now North America, Canada, and the United States. So unfortunately, no Netherlands. But if you can, check out which flavor you like the best. Coconut almond. You've got cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, and salted caramel. There's something for everyone. And you get at least 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams of net carbs. Right now, go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's using the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com or Built.com. Going to Vegas this week, fantasy football draft. Alex has a big draft. Of course, tune into tonight's live fantasy football show on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Should be great. Vinny Iyer, our fantasy football expert. I'm going to be there watching intently, getting ready for my draft on Saturday. So we talk about Cliff Kingsbury. We had Peter Schrager on the show yesterday, and he had some interesting insight on Cliff Kingsbury. He's a believer in Cliff Kingsbury. I'm a guy that's in the camp of the jury is still out on whether or not he can hang and coach at the NFL level. And then Alex, I believe, is one of the Cliff Kingsbury detractors. You're not a big believer in Cliff Kingsbury.
I'm not a believer in. Yes, that is true. I think that they should rip the Band-Aid off at the end of last season. The Armageddon situation is the Cardinals starting 2-5, and they fire Cliff Kingsbury after week 7. That is the Armageddon situation. And we are staring that smack dab in the face if they don't produce. And maybe Steve Keim's too egomaniacal to fire him mid-season. So you want to waste a whole season. I think that the Cardinals would probably have a better chance with Vance Joseph at this point than Cliff Kingsbury. But I see your side. I'm not closed off. Nope, not going to work. We'll see. If this offense won't work with the offensive skill position players they have right now, he does not deserve to be a head coach past this season in the NFL in perpetuity. You know how many teams would yearn for this offensive lineup? How many teams? 10, 15 would love to have this offensive lineup. If Cliff Kingsbury can't produce with this offensive lineup, he does not deserve to be an NFL head coach.
Yeah, there are a few in the NFL, and one of them's coming to town this week in Kansas City. And in Kansas City, it's interesting when you mentioned Cliff Kingsbury, somebody has comped. Cliff Kingsbury could be, on a similar path or comps very well as far as his coaching style, his players coach mentality to a guy like Andy Reid. Andy Reid happened to have just 5 wins in his first season as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach. That was his first year in the league. He had a rookie quarterback, just like Cliff Kingsbury. He was an offensive-minded head coach, continues to be so. And then, the next season, DNAB and Andy Reid put it together, and they went from 5-11 to 11-5. That didn't happen with the Cardinals. They made best, but they certainly weren't, an instant playoff contender right out of the gates. Also, Eric Bieniemy's coming to town, a guy who's always sought after, but still hasn't, gotten that head coaching gig that a lot of people expect him to get. But right now, as it stands, before we have our guys kind of that are under the radar that are going to emerge this season, it's Eric Bieniemy, Brian Daboll, or the trendy coaches and the people that a lot of fans look to as a potential successor to Cliff Kingsbury. I just don't know. Right now, Eric Bieniemy's been an OC his entire. That's the highest position he's held in the NFL. So is Brian Daboll of the Buffalo Bills, the OC. I think that you're taking and you're going to have to endure just as many lumps as you have so far with Cliff Kingsbury. The grass isn't necessarily greener, and it's going to be very. And I do that. That being said, I think that it's very important to figure out who Cliff Kingsbury is this season, because if he's just this guy that's gonna, you don't know much more about at the end of this year and where we are right now, then that's a problem too. You have to figure out if he can coach at this level this season.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Brian Daboll has been with New England. He's been with Alabama, which now actually has some credence to it. Offensive coordinator and head and quarterbacks coach. He was being with Belichick and Saban at the second level, I would take over a guy that's never been a successful head coach ever, Bo. Ever. Not he had a couple good years, couple down years, didn't have good squads. He had Patrick Mahomes in college and he couldn't win. Sure, they don't recruit good defensive players in Texas, whatever. He has never succeeded at the position he continues to hold. And that is just a truthful statement. I would have taken Brian Daboll last year, would have fired Cliff Kingsbury, and you go with it. Because I would much rather take, at this point, a guy that's been a number 2 under winning organizations over a guy that has never won anywhere in any capacity in the position he's holding now. I think it's as simple as that.
Brian Daboll, actually, his tenure in Kansas City came to a close when Andy Reid was hired. But the season before, they were a putrid offense. They were in the 30s as far as where they finished statistically. And he's obviously developed, improved as a play caller. And I think that that's where a lot of people are sleeping on Cliff Kingsbury, is that he can improve. And he's already taken this team, as we mentioned earlier at the start of this podcast, about how bad 2018 was, that they won't even acknowledge that team's existence. 14 points per game. He got him up towards 22 in his first season with Kyler Murray. And then last year, they were a team that was right around 26, and there's room for improvement now. Now, if they take a step back, then I think you're absolutely right. Maybe you need to check into some other options. But, I think Cliff Kingsbury has done everything he's been asked to do. Sure, they fell short. I thought it was interesting watching the end of the preseason game and watching Chris Streveler navigate and sometimes struggle against Dallas Cowboys third and fourth stringers and be like, this guy was going up against top defense in the NFL last year in the regular season finale with the expectation of winning and punching their ticket to the postseason. It's like, talk about impossible odds.
Puts me to sleep sometimes, this offense.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't.
Bo,
sometimes it's electric.
Bo, if Kyler Murray was the quarterback in 2018, they would have won more than 3 games. He got Kyler Murray. They got that's completely, you can't. It's as if 2019 was an expansion organization. The Arizona Cardinals pivoted to be an expansion team. You cannot give Cliff Kingsbury credit for improving on 2018 when you draft number 1 overall. That is just a fallacy. You can't.
Yes, you do. Absolutely.
Kyler Murray wasn't quarterback in 2018.
I understand that. It was one of the biggest busts, if not the biggest bust in the organization's history. But, there was just so much turnover. And you're right. Expansion is probably pretty on par with what they were trying to do. But to go to 5 wins and then immediately 2 seasons later be at 8 wins, and sure, it was disappointing. But, if you take into consideration the fact that they didn't have a consistent kicking game, and then Kyler Murray was hurt down the stretch, I mean, it looks completely different. It looks completely different.
A good coach makes the playoffs last year.
I don't know if that's, a good coach can't make those kicks.
But a good coach doesn't put your team in positions like that if you call the right plays in different parts of the game. Those are the flashbulb memories we have of Kyler Murray getting injured and going to week 18. Week 17, everybody was healthy. You lost to a damn backup quarterback. Whose fault was it then?
With your backup quarterback. Kyler Murray wasn't healthy.
In week 16?
No, week 17.
I'm talking about week 16 when they played C.J. Beathard and lost.
Yeah. No, that was inexcusable. I mean, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Locked On Cardinals, part of your Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Where do you guys stand as far as Cliff Kingsbury? Could the 2022 Arizona Cardinals head coach be in the building in State Farm and not be on the Cardinals sideline? It's interesting, But Alex loves Brian Daboll. He's Team Daboll.
I would take Bieniemy. Bieniemy's been great also, but I think Brian Daboll if we're talking about guys who have had more experience with winning organizations across the landscape of their existence as offensive coordinators, yeah, but I mean, it's by hair. You take anybody. I take pretty much anybody with experience over Cliff Kingsbury right now.
I think that, I think Bieniemy is almost a product of the Chiefs' success. Like, it's tough to secure a job while your team's playing as deep as they've been in the final game of each of the last 2 seasons, winning one of them. So Patrick Mahomes as well. He had Patrick Mahomes, and he has Andy Reid, who does a lot as far as the offensive play calling. It's Locked On Cardinals. We're going to wrap up there. We're going to have a Throwdown Thursday tomorrow. Might take away from what we just got into just now. And then Friday, we're previewing another preseason football game, and we've got our halftime show coming that night as well. Look out for that as the game kicks off. Was it 5 o'clock in the desert? Yeah, that's going down on Friday. Can't wait for it. Locked On Cardinals. You guys have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you